All right, everybody. This is Ross. Welcome back. It's another episode of Fruit Talk. We're live. Holy crap, we did it. Every time I go live, and it's been a while, I'm always shocked. Let me just get set up real quick here, guys. I want to make sure people have this link and they can view the live stream whenever they want. Yep, here we go. Publishing to our blog. Okay. So, for you guys out there, before I begin this episode of Fruit Talk, it's been a while, hasn't it? And thank you guys for joining me. I really do appreciate it. Before I get going here, I want to make a couple announcements. We are going to talk about quite a bit in tonight's episode. It's really going to be crazy, actually. If you're here in the chat, by the way, please say hello because I want to make sure that I have the right chat open. Pop out chat. Yeah, that should be right. So before we get started, as I said, we're going to talk about, before I get into this, these announcements, we're going to talk about what's going on in the orchard. It's been a long time since I've updated you guys. We've been doing these really shorter videos to try to appeal more to the YouTube algorithm. And more people just tend to watch these shorter videos. I know it's not really my style. I know it's not the style of my viewers, my subscribers. You know, we like these longer form content videos with a lot more information in them. But I think it's been fun. It's been interesting to see one way of doing it. There's been a couple particular types of videos revolving around figs specifically that I really wanted to put out a super high quality video on because I wanted that information out there as clean and as concise as possible so that when you guys are watching those videos, it just clicks more or it makes more sense or the algorithm takes care of it or whatever it is. And it's weird how it all works, unfortunately, because some of the worst videos I put out get the most views and the best videos tend to get the least amount of views. But this time it actually worked out pretty well in that we did do a video recently on light. For anyone that saw that, that's probably my most important video of the year. And we actually did a blog post here about it. Highly recommend you guys go to the blog and check out figboss.com. It's in the link. The link is in the description of all my videos. And we did this video on light, and I think it made a lot of sense to people. I think a lot of people looking at the comments really were happy to, see that this information was out there. To me, it should have been common sense for all these years, but it just never clicked. And I think for a lot of people, this is going to make so many people happier. And we're going to put a video out kind of related to this relatively soon. I'm not sure how it's all going to work, but we're going to kind of go back to those other types of videos that I've been more accustomed to doing. We just don't have a whole lot of time anymore, and editing does take some time, is what these videos were all about. Is really just, like I said, trying to bring it down and not do this whole thing in one shot. Do the whole video in one shot, then upload it, and then it's out there. And it is what it is. And if there's something in it, like I burped or something, or I didn't really say what I wanted to say, or it didn't come out the way I wanted, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. It does matter, but it doesn't matter in that sense. Like, it's not the end of the world, right? So that's what we're going to try to go back to that thing. And I think a lot of people are going to be relieved to hear me say that. Others are going to be like, no, Ross, you should keep doing what you're doing, because I think there's a lot of people who are on the opposite end of that, right? Some people think it's better to have quality over quantity. Some people think it's better to have quantity over quality, and do some more of a vlog style video. I think people miss the constant updates on the yard and really just want to know what the plans of what is just going on, because that's what we normally do. And that's kind of what this podcast is going to be about. And that's also sort of why I haven't done many podcasts, is I really wanted to see what the algorithm would do when I started creating these shorter videos that are more concise and hopefully the average view time would go up. Yada yada yada. It's all nonsense. I don't even care. It was a cool experiment. I think it's nice to see what I did. We'll get into the orchard here in just a second, guys, of what we're actually planning to do. I just want to mention before we do that, again, one or two more announcements. If you haven't already, check out the blog. It's got so much information on here. What I'm going to be doing, I think it's sometime, let me open up my calendar here, guys. I think it's sometime in September, like middle of September. I have the exact date somewhere in here, but someone reached out to me at the California Rare Fruit Growers. Yeah, it's going to be August 28th. I'm doing a presentation for the California Rare Fruit Growers on figs. So that one's going to be super informative. And what I'm going to be doing in that presentation is kind of getting a lot of information on this blog and then forming that from the blog into a presentation where I will give my talk. And a lot of it's going to be about varieties and, other minor kind of fig-related techniques and things you can do. But a lot of it's going to be about the genetic diversity. So what we've been doing is we've been creating these posts here on these different varieties. And I've been going into crazy amount of detail about these figs, things like the origin, if there's any synonyms, where it falls in terms of the taste grouping, the texture of the fruits. I mean, so many different things, the shape, the hang time. Here's even just an amazing thing here about the origin, at least what we know about it, because Smith has such an amazing history to it. I'll just read you guys a portion of this. The most credible information I've heard, and by the way, I got to give credit to my friend Brian Rodrigue down in Louisiana. He is the LSU fig guy, and he says that Smith originates in Croatia, as he talked to the people at Becknell, because somehow it made its way to France, where the Becknell family picked it up and then brought it to the United States. Over many years, they made it a very popular fig in the South through their many nursery sales, and to many growers down there, it's as popular as Celeste or Brown Turkey. But it definitely is far superior to those. You really could tell right away when you bite into it. It's also, by the way, used in LSU's breeding program for a very short time, is what Brian believes, and a few other LSU folks believe, or really serious Louisiana hobbyists believe, is that there's a fig down there that was bred in their orchard, or one of their orchards. It's called LSU Strawberry, and I actually am growing that one as well. Some people just call it strawberry. So that it's kind of amazing how these figs, the origin of all this, and I know a lot of people, when I do these reviews on YouTube, we look at the flavor, the texture, we talk about everything about these figs, we always sort of forget about the origin. And this is kind of more of like really along the lines of, really putting out all this information that I know about it and I think is the most accurate information that I can find or have experienced from these varieties. So this is kind of going to be like a little bit of like a fig index in a sense, where a lot of people in the past have tried to just put out like this giant crazy amalgamation of fig varieties and index them and make sure that all the synonyms are all sorted out, which is in my opinion impossible. But this one is kind of really just going to highlight in these blog posts the most, really the I don't know how to put this exactly, but the varieties that you guys really ought to know. They're popular. They should be on everybody's mind. That when you think about figs, these are the figs you think of first, and that's what we're going to kind of, or at least you should be thinking of them first, because this is the base of all fig varieties. If you don't know these very common ones, why would you even venture into the really super rare, exotic, stupid stuff that is really mostly a total waste of your time? But yeah, these are like the standards, the tried and true varieties. So we're going to talk about that on the blog, and what you can do is just go to the blog, and all the way down at the bottom you put in your email address and you can subscribe, and every time I just create a new blog post, you'll just get an email. That's all that is. So that's, that's one big announcement. Thank you guys, by the way, for commenting in the comments. I do want to also mention before we go any further, hit the subscribe button if you guys haven't already. I should have probably said that the very first word, but I see a lot of new names in the chat, which is very interesting. Thank you guys for joining me. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, so if you guys have questions, as we do for all these live streams, just post your question in the comments. I'll get back to it at the end of this episode of Fruit Talk. We'll always go through the chat, get to everybody's question. And if you have to go, leave your question in the chat and I'll get back to it at the end. And you can always go back to this video. It'll be saved on the channel and you can always go back and see what the answer was. Okay. The last little announcement before we get into the actual episode, we got so many announcements, it feels like. I haven't done one of these things in a while, is that I have some trees for sale. So if you guys are interested, I know a lot of people have been asking me for months. People ask me all the time. People are asking me for cuttings right now, which is crazy because I don't sell cuttings outside of November through January. We're in the growing season. How can I sell cuttings, right? But that's what people want. They want cuttings over trees most of the time. I don't know why, but we have trees for sale. So very simply, you can go to the link down in the description and you'll see the link to FigBid, which is a link to all the trees I currently have listed. And they all at this point should be listed on FigBid. We start off the bids. It's like eBay. If anyone's not familiar, we start them off at $10. The person at the end of the auction, so here's the end date and the end time. At the end of this date, this upcoming Sunday, the auctions will end, and whoever has the highest bid will win the auction. To me, it seems like the most fair way just because of sheer demand of how many people want my trees. Like I said, I get people asking me all the time. And, it is also a lot of work to sort of reserve trees for specific people. So if people want the trees, this is what's available, and you don't even need to ask. Whatever is available and ready to be shipped, ready to be sold, will be listed on FigBid in the coming weeks, in the coming months. We're going to plan to sell these trees on FigBid all the way through probably the fall. We'll probably have some bare-rooted trees we'll sell in the fall. And we're going to sell a lot of trees that I'm actually waiting to see what the fruit is like, or to confirm the variety. And then we'll actually sell the tree probably sometime in August or September or October, etc. But these are smaller trees. We have all kinds of information in the descriptions, by the way. Some of them actually have fruit on them, which is pretty cool. And I have lots of information here. So the information about the variety, you guys can feel free to contact me about any questions you might have on FigBid. It's very easy. The whole thing, by the way, connects right to your PayPal account. And then I have some handling instructions. It's really important to read through all of this. And I even have a video here. I was considering doing a video actually right now instead of this podcast to let you guys know about some of the things some of the steps you should take when you receive the tree, so that way it doesn't die. That way you have a good experience, and you just overall have a good time receiving a plant in the mail. So, all right, we're going to talk now about this episode of Fruit Talk. As I said, what's going on in the orchard, maybe in some other... Oh, hello from Fig Country. What's up, Brian? Yeah. Maybe in some other video we'll talk about, or some other podcast, we'll talk about the garden. I actually have very soon will come out a tour of the garden. We made big changes to the garden. Whole podcast episode I could probably dedicate to that. And then we also made huge changes, or we did a tour, We did a tour of the orchard. So all of the different fruiting plants that we have throughout the yard that I thought were of specific interest. We did like almost a 50-minute tour of looking at some fruits on the trees. We looked at the production. We talked about little things along the way. We talked about philosophy of growing these fruit trees and perennials in general, and even had some tastings of things like honeyberries because I actually have pretty ripe fruits, a lot of ripe fruits right now, which is exciting. So let's start off with talking about what's kind of happening now that the season started. And a lot of these photos are pretty weird. we I have not really been taking many photos of the orchard this year. We did start out pretty strong in the beginning with things. We took different photos of the garden. Here's some garlic that we pulled. Here's some of the strawberry plants that we had. Here's some like the beginning of the fig orchard. Here's a lot of the flowers. The Gumi was loaded. We had so many flowers that you had to just assume we were going to have probably the most fruitful year we've ever had, and it's really lived up to that. This is going to be the most fruit I've ever had by far, and every year it gets progressively more and more fruit. Obviously, it should if you're doing the right things, but it's been leaps and bounds this year compared to last year, and every year progressively, like I said, gets better. But this is such a big jump from other years that I've been so pleased. So one of the things that we could talk about is kind of the order in which these fruit trees are going. But I'm going to try to just kind of visualize the orchard in my mind and think about these different fruiting plants as we go. So one of the fruits that I just recently had that I think a lot of people should be excited about that they're not, because there's always mixed reviews on this fruit, and I had mixed reviews for years. If you guys remember on some of my videos, if you saw some of the prior ones, we had let's see here, some videos on honeyberries. And the honeyberry, like I said, we talked about, actually we did a whole episode on Fruit Talk of them, and they're really, really good. Like, no joke, they're an amazing berry. They're an amazing fruit, and they do not get enough credit. This video here we did, I think at the end of last year, or the end of the season of the honeyberries last year, we got a pretty decent glimpse of them. My God, look how long my hair was, right? And we still to this day don't have good production on them. So that's like my biggest thing with these berries is that they don't produce a lot. They look like a blueberry. I was considering if they're even better than a blueberry or not in this video, and I actually think they are better than blueberries. Like, they're actually that good. I had one today that was mind-blowingly sweet, like a blueberry. So I'm pretty convinced at this point that this particular fruit is a keeper, and a lot of people ought to grow it and just stick it out, because there's a couple problems, and I don't know all the problems with this plant, but mine seemed to, in the beginning when I first planted them, they didn't do so hot. I've had these plants for years. I've transplanted some around. I had one, I think now it's been in the ground for like 4 or like 5 years. I think maybe this is its 5th year in the ground, and it still isn't productive. But I know I've seen photos of these plants. I've seen, like orchards of these plants. They will be productive at some point, even though my plants are not. I don't know why that is. Again, I don't know. There's a lot of people who have just generally have problems with these plants. But the berry, as I said, is so good. It is 110% worth growing this fruit. I also would argue it's probably going to make a really, really, really good jam. And I've talked about that in the past. Someone, I think, had mentioned that on maybe growing fruit or something, and I read it, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. And then after eating the fruit, you can really it really has a wild flavor to it. It's like a kiwi, oddly enough. Even though it looks like a blueberry, even this photo doesn't really do the fruits justice, because from this point here and they turn blue, you need to wait like 3 weeks. Like, this photo was taken May 21st, and today is June 8th. So how many days is that? That's 10 days plus 8. That's 18 days. That's almost 3 weeks um, from when they turned blue. So I was harvesting off of this bush right here. So it was like 2.5 weeks after they turn blue. They get to a really large size, actually. This doesn't, again, if you're eating your honeyberries at this point, they look like this, they're not ripe. They should very much so look like a blueberry, but they're long, they're plump, they are actually quite big. I was surprised at how big they got. They're actually a pretty decent sized berry. I'm just shocked. Again, I think they're actually as the further along they go, the sweeter they get, and a lot that kind of is like the main selling point for I think a lot of people. Because if they're sweet, people just enjoy them. If they're not sweet, people are less likely to like them, and they're kind of in that category of things like currants and maybe goji berries and things that are like more healthy rather than good. And these honeyberries are extremely good, and I would say they're in my top like 5, maybe top 3 of berries. The marionberry is number 1, which we'll talk about maybe in detail a little bit at some point, but my marionberries this year are going nuts. They're finally getting somewhat established. I should have a lot of those to taste. That berry is really an explosion of flavor because it looks like a blackberry. Let's show you guys what these look like. Kind of the early spring here, or the beginning of the summer, is like berry time. We did a video talking about how it's the king of all berries. It is the king of all berries. I don't have a great photo of this. This was like my first, I mean, look how small these plants are. This is like my first time I was even getting to try these damn things. They look like a blackberry, as you can see, but they are so much better. It's like a raspberry explosion of flavor in your mouth. It's super wild. You have to grow this plant just for that experience. And I planted the Olympic berry this year I got from Rain Tree to see if perhaps it would be as good. If you look at the Olympic berry Rain Tree, you could probably get here it is. So this one, the most outstanding berry of the Northwest. Large blackberry family fruit developed in 1920s on Vashon Island. Yada, yada, yada. Raintree has brought it back for its exquisite flavor, described as a startling sweetness and almost buttery richness, and just the necessary slight hint of tang. So it sounds like a very sweet berry. I think I've heard them say, or at least this review is enough for me to trial some other type of blackberry, because I don't think the marionberry can be beat. But this one seems to me to be a good choice. The honeyberry, as we were talking about before, it just, I don't really know where to put it, but it's definitely not better than the marionberry. It's probably in my top 5 somewhere. I think it's better than a raspberry. I think it's better than probably most blackberries. And that was only one variety, so the other key point I think about them is that once they sort of get established, you get through that phase of like they're giving you problems and they start growing and they seem healthy. By the way, I think is really well solved by putting down a lot of organic material and mulch. Keeping the soil covered really, really helps these plants. And I think more of their natural habit, by the way, I think people struggle with is they tend to grow in the spring, and then that's it. For the rest of the summer, they stop. And I've noticed that as well. Even with my very healthy plants now, they just kind of stop. They don't normally grow past a certain date. At least that's what I've seen. So if you can grow them, you live in a colder place, I think you really are better off growing them further up north, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how far south you can go with these, but it's a really, really, really good berry, as I said. So all the haters and people, the non-believers of this berry, the only real way you're gonna know is in time. It may take like 3 or 4 years, unfortunately, and you have to wait until the berry just basically falls off the plant. So if I were to touch these berries, they would be really tight on the plant. It's kind of like picking any fruit. You really have to wait until it just barely comes off the plant without any sort of force. And if that happens, you get them perfectly ripe. They're actually really good. They're up there, and the flavor is not just sweet, but it's really tangy, like a kiwi. It really is like a kiwi plus a grape, maybe some other berry. So that's probably my biggest recommendation of this year. Yeah, by the way, Mark, there is a variety of Marionberry called Tillamook, oddly enough. Or no, that's actually, I'm sorry, that's a variety of Gumi, which is what I was going to get into. So there is a variety of Gumi that I grow called Carmine, and this is my other big recommendation for berries. I think the honeyberry and the marionberry are pretty darn close in terms of quality of the berry, but I put the Gumi above it. So that's saying something, right? The marionberry's up there, the Gumi's up there, and the honeyberry are all like top tier berries in my yard. And this guy is extremely, extremely productive. We talked about in the spring how productive it was, and that was just seeing all the flowers. All the flowers set, and now the damn thing is basically bending over. A lot of the branches have bent over and are almost touching the ground because the sheer weight of the fruits on those branches is too much. So it's not even a plant, I think, that gets too out of control. Now probably in its fourth year in the ground, maybe fifth year, it has just become so ridiculously productive that it doesn't even get too big. So I think that was a worry of myself, that I thought, oh, maybe I won't be able to control this thing. It is an Elaeagnus. They're nitrogen fixers, but they just do so well. I mean, I wish I had. I do have some photos of the plant actually, but I don't have any updated photos of the plant. In the tour video that we're gonna do, and I'm gonna do a separate video of the Gumi, just talking about, because I love this plant so much. It's called Carmine, by the way. That's the variety. You guys really need to find yourself a Carmine Gumi plant. This is it right here in the very early spring when it had a lot of its flowers. You can't. It's just the photo doesn't really do it justice. Here's actually a close up of some of the branches in the spring, and you can see that when we talked about the productivity, is that it was 4 to 7 flowers on every single node. So every growth point that came out from last year's wood, the majority of that growth had some fruit on it, and it was on average 4 to 7 berries. And if you just have a really small section, I mean, the distance between these nodes is nothing. It's maybe a half inch, not even a half inch. So you could have a couple feet, a branch that's maybe 2 or 3 feet long. You could have easily 100 berries. I mean, that's really on the conservative side, actually. A lot of berries. So we'll show you guys that plan as we go along. I wish I should have took photos before I did this, but kind of spur of the moment, this whole podcast. I'm growing from the suburbs of Philly. If anybody is interested, I know someone mentioned it in the chat. If you guys are just joining me, thank you for coming in. If you have questions, we're going to do a Q&A at the end. Just put the question down in the chat, and I'll get back to it at the end. And we'll definitely try to follow along with the chat as we go throughout this episode of Fruit Talk. So Passionate Fruit actually just said, are you growing any of the Primacane blackberry varieties? So yeah, I did. I grew Triple Crown for many years. I grew Primark Freedom. I grew Primark 45. I grew. I think that's it. Actually, Triple Crown is not one of the Primacane varieties, but I did grow Primark Freedom. I love those. They're really good, but the Marionberry is just far superior in terms of the flavor. Um, did have so many blackberries my like second or third year with them that we had a big problem with SWD, which is the spotted wing Drosophila, and I didn't know really what to do at the time with that um, with that pest, and it got overwhelming and out of control. And I have never seen at that point more than I ever did then. The numbers have dramatically decreased of the spotted wing Drosophila, and even just how to deal with them, I've learned over the years. But I was so discouraged after that year, after seeing so many blackberries, and then having to deal with that pest, that I ended up taking out almost all my blackberries. And then I realized I should only grow the primocane varieties, as you just said. Which, for anyone that doesn't know, the primocane varieties will fruit in the fall. So here in my climate, if you wait for the primocane varieties in the fall, it's almost too late in the season, unfortunately. It's just too late. It's just such a late thing that happens. I think I'm even better off keeping the floricane crop, because that somehow makes the primocane crop a little bit earlier, I think. At least that's what I remember seeing, if I'm not mistaken, from those many years ago. But I took out the floricane crop. You can cut them all to the base, let the new primocanes come up and fruit. I took out the floricanes simply because of the pest, the spotted wing Drosophila. They seemed to had really gone crazy at that time of the year when they were fruiting in like August. But I'll tell you what, you know, looking back on it, I should have just kept them, and the numbers over time have significantly decreased. And actually, I would argue that in like July and August, when something like Triple Crown would fruit on the floricanes, or even the Marionberry was going to probably fruit, let's say sometime in early July or at the end of June, there is no SWD, there is no spotted wing, there is no fruit flies. So kind of made a judgment call and sort of regret it at this point. But in the future, I'm going to be planting probably, like you said, passion fruit. I'm going to put in some more primocane varieties in the future. I'm going to trial my new property as soon as I move, because we're not going to stay here forever. We are going to put in the different varieties of everything. So not just the blackberry, not just the raspberries, but all kinds of fruits, trialing all these different species in a sense, but also mostly the varieties. So many varieties of blackberries. So Traveler and one other. Yeah, there's 4 of them. I think I tried Traveler. I definitely tried 45, and I tried Freedom. Marionberries are outstanding. Their flavor is closer to our tiny berried native Rubus ursinus species. Yeah, I wonder what some more of these hybrids are going to put out, like the Tayberry. It's not just the blackberries, but the hybrids between the raspberries and the blackberries. We've talked about this in other episodes of Fruit Talk. There's Tayberries, and there's thimbleberries, and there's boysenberries, and they all have their own special, unique characteristics, and usually that somehow changes the flavor as well with their genetics. So we're going to try all this stuff at some point. So let's move on to a different fruit. We talked about the honeyberry, the marionberry, the gumi. Those are probably my 3 most probably the 3 berries I'm looking forward to the most. I'm getting ripe gumi as of probably the 5th of June, so about 3 days ago. It's super early. The honeyberry is also probably just as early as the gumi. We're getting tons of strawberries. We did our strawberry video today. Not a ton of views on it, but that's not the worst thing in the world. we are getting, at this point, bowls of strawberries, which is kind of surprising. It's not like it hasn't happened in the past, but because I transplanted them into that bed, we talked about it in today's video of putting them in this box, basically. And we took them only 3 months ago up out of their location on the other side of the fence where the blueberries are. We put them and moved them over here, and 3 months later, they're just filled with fruits, and it's like nothing ever happened. I mean, it's just amazing for a perennial to do that. Normally you think of a perennial, you think that, oh, it has to stay in the ground for like a few years, maybe 3 to 5 years for different fruit trees, and maybe even longer for different fruit trees before they mature. Right? They're perennials. The longer they're in the ground, the better they're going to do, and that's probably true to an extent for the strawberry. Right? I mean, at some point they get too old and they become less productive, but I have been amazed that you pretty much can treat a strawberry like an annual. You can, you know, dig them up, put them somewhere, and then dig them up again. You could even put them in your fridge, pretend like it's winter, and then transplant them back out again, and they'll fruit. Yo, what's going on, Chris? So it's just, yeah, it's amazing. These strawberries, and like I said, I've been getting a lot of them. We did a little taste test. We talked about the box that I created, and someone, Eric, actually on Instagram was messaging me and talking about how he created a box just like mine. Maybe we call it what did he call it? We call it like a coffin. Let's see here. By the way, shout out to my buddy Dom on Instagram, Squares and Fair. He makes the best pizza. Like if you're in, South Jersey, just order some pizza from him. Like it's that simple. All right. So then Eric said, what did he call it? Got a winch set up for the Mar de Bois strawberry. All right. So he said, he didn't name it exactly, but let's call it I don't know. Let's call it a strawberry coffin or something, right? But the netting over top is great. Creating a box for them is fantastic, especially if you can get it up higher above to your waist. So you don't have to bend down and pick up all these strawberries all the time. But it keeps out all the birds, the critters. I've been saying it keeps out the slugs, but I actually don't think that's necessarily totally true because the slugs are getting in there, it seems like. And I think what they're doing is they get in between the soil and the raised bed somehow, and they get in, which stinks. But for the most part, I have had the cleanest strawberries I've had this year. So the Mar de Bois, the Rutgers Scarlet, we talked about them today. They're fantastic. So I've been like eating like a deer at this point. We're getting really close to that time of the year, sometime in early to mid June, where I just become a deer grazing through my yard, and that's all I do. Today, I'm not even kidding. 80% of what I ate today was fruit, and that makes me feel good. Makes me feel happy. I feel the best, honestly, eating fruits and vegetables. So, yeah, there's this particular. When you eat all these antioxidants, there's a particular microbe in your microbiome called the Akkermansia, if I'm not mistaken. And that, if you look up, Akkermansia microbe, antioxidant. Yeah, this is it. Akkermansia muciniphila. So what they're saying about this, when you have more of these, when you eat more antioxidants and you get more of this microbe, it does all these amazing things. I mean, a lot of the, some of the microbes can be good or bad for you, obviously. But this one's supposed to be really good for, glucose metabolism. Apparently, I saw something somewhere. I heard something somewhere. Don't quote me. Not a doctor, but apparently there's some kind of thing where they did a fecal transplant or gave people a lot of this particular microbe and took it, or they did a fecal transplant from somebody who was skinny that had this particular microbe in them in higher quantities, and then did the fecal transplant into someone who was overweight, and then they lost all this weight. So, like, in a sense, if you can just get a lot of this, it makes sense if it's glucose metabolism because your weight is largely affected by your insulin. So maybe this is the study, but I don't know. Yeah, here it is. This might even be the study here. So pretty interesting. For me, at least, it is definitely a greater feeling. I feel so much better when I eat all these berries. And not just the berries, but just fruit in general, or fruits and vegetables in general. But particularly around this month, like, there's something weird about this month, this time of the year, when I have all these different berries. And normally, I've been pulling some out. You know, we pulled out all of our red currants. We pulled out the black currants. I'd be eating red currants right now. I would be eating goji berries right now. If I go to, you know, I think there's for health purposes, I really do think there's probably a really good case for these plants. And I probably shouldn't have pulled them out. Just knowing what I know now about my health and things like that. I mean, we don't know for sure, but I'm also getting alpine strawberries. We didn't get to that yet. Pretty soon I'm going to have mulberries. We're getting cherries right now. We're going to have gooseberries very, very soon. We're going to have josta berries very soon. You know, different types of currants. Let's see here. I'm going to have apricots, very soon. Nectarines very soon. Cherries in the form of, maybe not the bush cherry. Actually, yeah, I guess the bush cherries. What other fruits would I normally have? Yeah, actually, I removed some of them even from this spreadsheet. But things like the goji and the currants definitely come to mind. The raspberry is going to be ripe very soon. Even some blackberries, I'm sure you could probably get at this point. So you have all these different fruits, and the different fibers that come from these fruits, the different antioxidants within these fruits, give you this particular microbe, and therefore make me feel way better. Maybe it's not even this particular microbe. Maybe it's some other microbe, but I'm also not even just eating fruits from my yard. I'm eating different fruits I bought at the store right now. So I bought some cherries. I bought some pears, some Asian pears. Like I said, 80% of what I ate today was a fruit. Anyway, I could keep going on and on about that, but certainly it's worth looking into for anybody interested. And let's see, what other fruits are going for us? Like I said, what do we want to talk about here? I probably have, let me just go over some numbers real quick and how insane this is. By the way, if anyone wants to see this spreadsheet, it's down in the description. This is just what I use to keep track of things. I know there's a lot of new people for some reason in the chat. I guess that's kind of what happens, right? Mike Kim asked, how did the blueberries go? So that's the crazy part. I don't know what it is, guys, but I live like in Blueberry Haven. I swear to you, my soil is like a 6. It's really not great soil, but I think because it's not great, the soil is a 6. I was listening to Jeff Lawton talk about soil pH recently, and he was mentioning why. I think it's because there's so much water. We have so much rainfall here that the soil tends to be more acidic. Yeah, I think that's what he said. And if you have less rainfall, it tends to be more basic, if I'm not mistaken. So the soil here is very wet, and it's therefore very acidic. And because it has both of those two things, blueberries love it. The soil never dries out. Never have to water them. That's the big thing with the blueberry too, is that if it ever dries out for even just a short time, it's done. Um, the other thing too, big tip here, guys, is that as soon as your fruits are starting to turn color, especially my cherries, especially my blueberries, the honeyberries as well, you will not get those fruits. You will not eat them. So you need to immediately, as soon as you see one of them or very few of them start to turn color, get a net on them. Get something over top of them that is going to prevent, these fruits from getting eaten. So the blueberries, by the way, like I said, I live in Blueberry Haven. Someone should start like a blueberry plantation on my property. I think the Jersey blueberries down in the sandy soil that they have, all throughout Jersey and stuff. There's a ton of farms really not that far away from me, and there isn't really any in Pennsylvania that I know of. I'm sure people are growing blueberries in some setting, but someone ought to plant some blueberries around here. I think the land's just too expensive, to be honest. But yeah, it's nuts, personally. So I think I've got roughly. I should have took some photos today. I think I did take some photos. I probably have about roughly like over. I think I've got about like 3,000 blueberries or more from like very few plants. This is the worst photo ever. Sorry, guys. But this will describe one little cluster of blueberries. I think I had whatever variety that is. It puts out huge blueberries. So some varieties I've noticed. Here's my list here. I think it might be Elliott. Elliott puts out huge. No, it says it's very late, but it's early. Maybe it's Duke? No, it's Chandler. Chandler Bing. Yeah, this is the biggest blueberry. Like, it just is. It's just huge. The things are bigger than my thumb. Come on, Stark Bros. Come on. So, what? It's like no exaggeration here. Like, they are literally massive blueberries. And the thing I've noticed with the blueberry plants that I have around my yard is that you could tell by the flowers here, by the way. This is a good idea. Like, every flower turns into a fruit. I have great pollination because I have bumblebees everywhere. And every single fruit, for the most part, gets pollinated. I'm sure there's some exceptions, right? We're exaggerating a little bit. But certainly, if you see a flower here and the amount of fruit, they all turn into fruits. Like, it's just insane. And what I noticed is that some of the blueberry plants don't produce nearly as many flowers, or some of them don't get pollinated nearly as much for whatever reason. The Chandler blueberry produces less fruits, less flowers, but the fruits are huge. Now, if there was some way to thin the fruits on the other varieties, because this is the other variety right here that's just massively loaded. I mean, there's probably, I want to say like 500 at least on this one here, and 500 on another one that I have. But the berries at this point look so small, and I've seen them in prior years that are much smaller. And I think the reason for that is because there's just so many fruits. Like, the plant can't put out bigger fruits, right? I mean, when you thin out your peaches, you thin out your stone fruits, you thin out your apples, your pears, you get bigger fruits. So it's the same thing with these blueberries. And yeah, it is what it is. And I imagine maybe the Chandler is so big because it just doesn't have nearly as many flowers, or nearly as many as much as the pollination, perhaps. So it doesn't seem like a pollination thing. It just seems like it's less flowers to me. So if there was a way to thin them, I imagine they'd all be this big. And to me, it doesn't matter really how big they are, personally. I would care more about flavor. But if I was going to sell them, I think, what is it, Chandler, Duke, and Jersey are like the main the main ones. I think Elliot's a main one as well, but at least in this part of the country. So maybe if you want the huge ones, plant Chandler. I don't know which one's the best in terms of flavor. I actually kind of like Chippewa. It's not that productive compared to the others. It's like a half wild or something. It's sort of like a wild blueberry. I wasn't even sure if it was going to get pollinated that well. And it has a more wild blueberry flavor to it than the others. It's more of a kind of like that kiwi honeyberry extravagant flavor that's more complex, I think, than the others. So, yeah, I don't know how else to really answer that question other than if I just showed you guys the plants. I'm not kidding, like it's crazy. They're turning color right now. The first ones on Chippewa's very early and Chandler's the earliest. So I put nets on both of them today. And like I said, if you don't put the nets on them right away, you're going to lose all of them for the most part. Yeah, there's no real rush with the blueberries, but yeah, you get my point. So that's something there. The raspberries are doing great. This year I have them set up in a way that we have them in a raised bed. Wanted to really get that heat going. I've talked about this before. We used to have the raspberry bed, if you guys remember, where I planted my figs on the west side of the house. And we took out the raised bed, moved the raspberries, moved the blackberries. And then we decided when we moved them, we just going to put them straight in the ground. And it wasn't a good idea. It just wasn't. This is probably a good estimate here of what the patch looked like. Yeah. It's not loading, but this is not even as big as they can get right here. Like the blackberries at certain points got to like, 10 feet tall. I think in this video they were like 10 feet tall. But yeah, the raspberries on the end, and because they were in a raised bed, you can see the raised bed here. The soil was just so warm, and also watered them really well, I think, for a couple years, and they got really well established. Water them well in the spring, give them extra heat in the spring, and they just go nuts. And so we moved them, and then I realized they're not getting enough heat, and this is a problem because the raspberries and the blackberries are just not doing as well. So I built a raised bed, threw in all this extra soil this year to help warm things up and get their root systems established in a higher soil above grade to get more of that heat. And they've been loving it. They've been taking off. I did something not like this because when each of these plants, if you guys imagine, like this is one of the plants, then here's another plant right here. There's another plant right here, another one right here. So I spaced the blackberries every 3 feet. And then on the end was two raspberry plants. And for each plant, I kept them very tidy. I limited the canes to a certain number of canes, but in this raised bed, it's so wide, there's so much more room that instead of limiting to each plant to a certain number of canes, I've just staked each of the canes to have their own little area to grow in. It's kind of like limiting the number of canes on a fig tree that we've done this year and we've had really, really good success with. So, yeah, it's been amazing, I think, how that bed has been taken off. And I should be picking, pints of raspberries at the end of the season. We're going to have all the colors this year, too, I think. The yellow ones, the pink ones, the black ones, the purple raspberries, the red raspberries. Yeah, it's just going to be off the chart. And what I was doing, by the way, in this video years ago, this is 2017, I was getting 1 pint of strawberries every day, or 1 pint of raspberries, every day from each of the plants. So I was getting 2 pints every day from just 2 plants. And this is from August till November. And really the only explanation I can give you guys, because I wasn't getting that when I moved them. I wasn't getting that. The only way you can do that is if they're really well established and they're in a raised bed. Maybe in the south you don't have to do the raised bed because you just have warmer soil there, but here it's just you got to do it. So that was my lesson that I learned here, is that they really like that warmer soil. All right, what's next here? Um, by the way, big thing happened. The pawpaws flowered, first time in like 6 years. They also they flowered, and I didn't pollinate them myself, and they set fruits. And I saw the two little baby pawpaws hanging down off the plant, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna get some pawpaws." Look, the other day after a storm, and I think the storm may have knocked off the flowers, knocked off the fruits. So I don't know if I'm gonna get pawpaws this year, but I have to look. I have to get a closer look. This was like during the tour. I was filming and trying to find the pawpaws, but they were there, and so, to my surprise, didn't even pollinate them. So I don't know what the deal is with that, because it definitely visibly were there. They were definitely visibly had set the fruits. They were there on the tree. Who knows? I'll tell you what's been disappointing is my apple trees. They're growing and growing and growing. I think they're finally getting themselves established, but they're not. They're just not fruiting. There's very few of them that actually flowered. Maybe a lot of them flowered so much last year that they kind of did this, thing where they skip a year. I hope that's not the case. I think honestly, it's just the fact that they finally have kind of dug themselves in. The fertility in that area has been like leaps and bounds better. Put down wood chips after wood chips. The comfrey underneath is making everything so much more fertile. I'm telling you guys, comfrey is so underrated. I don't know why it gets so much crap. I think it gets crap because people love it so much. Like there's something that goes on, and I've read some scientific study that proves this, but you plant comfrey next to any fruiting plant, any perennial, that perennial is going to do better. It is like the best companion plant I've ever seen, by far. And I don't even know if I really believe in companion planting, but that one is for sure like a big deal. All right, let's see here. The cherries. I want to talk about the cherries. We do have a video coming out on the cherries very, very soon. Maybe I could show you guys a little glimpse of it. You know what? The cherry video I didn't come out well. The audio got messed up. But you can see here, it's really been disappointing because finally got my first cherries. I mean, look how many cherries that is. That's a lot of cherries, guys. This is a variety called white gold. And what happened was we had such a dry year so far. And then finally it just decided to rain. And it rained so much that it was just not consistent, this rain. If it was consistent, maybe it was a little bit here and there, and maybe it was just a little bit day after day, the cherries would have been fine, but they've split. They've cracked, and now the interior is exposed to the outside elements, and now they're starting to rot. They're starting to mold. It's just not good. So it's just another challenge of growing cherries, guys. This climate sucks for cherries, I'll tell you that. Either the birds get them or I have to pick them early because of this. I picked them all early and probably should even pick them before that because a lot of them I ended up throwing out. And by the way, they're not really that good at this point. You really need to let the fruits, all of them, ripen to their peak perfection. Otherwise, you should just buy them at the store. Like the cherries are actually pretty darn good at the store. So for me, I was really gung-ho, and I it's not over yet. I still have plenty of cherries left on the tree, but I'm kind of hoping that we don't get so much rain at once that the remainder on the tree doesn't split as well. But we're still waiting for them to turn perfectly red. So, yeah, we'll see. Yeah, Joe just said the only place where cherries can grow here in Mexico is the north, south of Arizona, North Mexico, where they've started with Bing, but This variety was on sale here as last year. Yeah, I mean, they definitely want a dry climate. A lot of these fruits, guys, the stone fruits specifically, they really, really do so much better in drier weather. It's just a shame. Like, it's just a trade off. Like, the blueberries are do well because they like that water, but the cherries and stone fruits, maybe they'll get lots of rot or disease, or even the trees will die. So it is what it is. Here's a glimpse of the peaches. This was just a section of the peaches, a photo I took. Move on to different stone fruits now. They are loaded with peaches. I mean, I'm probably going to look at 1,000 peaches across all my trees. How am I going to eat that many? And luckily, it starts soon. It'll start probably in a couple weeks. I should look at my dates, by the way. The Arctic Glow Nectarine starts 6/24. Oh my god, the apricot here is 6/9. Okay, this is 6/23. That seems more likely as to what's going to happen here with my tomcat. Yeah, but like I said, in a few weeks, like 2 weeks here, I'm gonna have my first nectarines, my first apricots of the season, and like I said, luckily they're spread out. So this Arctic Glow starts around 6/24. I would say the Red Haven starts sometime around mid-July. I don't have the dates listed. And then Alberta sometime in August. And then I have all these other ones here, like Saturn is kind of late. No, Indian Free is the latest one. Maybe Alberta's early August. So, it's like it's 1,000 peaches, but it's not going to all be at once, which is good. Because you can't eat 1,000 peaches at once. I think you might overdose on peaches. So, it will be spread out over the course of 2 months, maybe even 2.5 months. So that's pretty good. But a lot of my friends are gonna get these peaches. That's for sure. Like, I'm gonna get sick of them at a certain point. How many peaches can you possibly eat a day? Like, 2.5 months of peaches. Let's say I ate one every day. That's 75 peaches. What am I gonna do with 1,000, right? It's just, whatever. So I'm happy. Here's another photo, by the way. This is I took the other day. This past weekend, I was thinning the tree. This is my Red Haven, one of the espaliers in the backyard. That is, I mean, you could tell. Like, look how many fruits, and I've already thinned it. Except for this back part here. I took out probably, my dad was telling me, he's like, Ross, why are there so many peaches in the ground? I'm like, oh, well, I guess you didn't know, but you're supposed to thin like 60 to 70% of the tree. Like, I removed 60 to 70% of the peaches on the damn thing. And, what's interesting about the peaches that I throw on the ground, sometimes it's not a good idea because the plum cucurleo that's in the fruits potentially, or laid the eggs in the fruits, that's not a good idea sometimes. But I'm noticing over the years that things like squirrels and rabbits, this is like food for them. So if I leave it on the ground, something is going to eat them, believe it or not. And they're not going to go bad very quickly because they're, I don't know how to describe it, but it's so unripe at this point that it's kind of a really stable food at this point, I guess, that a lot of wildlife can benefit from. So I've left it there. But normal circumstances, I guess, if you don't have wildlife coming to eat that stuff, I probably would put them all in a bucket and get rid of them, just because of that plum cucurleo could get a little out of control. So the apricots of fruit, they're not too many, but I'm happy to just have any apricots, considering how frost sensitive they can be in the spring. The plums and the pluots, between them all, there's at least like 200 plums and pluots. So like I said, this just keeps going. Like there's so many gumi, there's so many blueberries, there's so many stone fruits. Even have pears on my pear trees. You know, there's lots of cherries. Unfortunately, a lot of them split. But really, the only disappointment this year is these apples. May even see some pawpaw. The shade tree, by the way, looks absolutely loaded, and I know that it's dropped every single year since I've had it. I don't know why I even just I'm just so patient with the damn thing. But this year it looks like it's progressing further than it ever has for some reason. It looks like it's going to somehow make a jump. Um, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. That would be really a pleasant surprise if I could get an idea of that fruit. Probably sometime, I imagine, in August or September, it'll be ready. The alpines have been ready. The white soul has been fruiting. I need to get myself some more red alpine strawberry varieties. They're just so good. And this white one doesn't do them justice, I think. I much prefer the red ones. Like I said, the Asian pears are fruiting. The European pears have some fruit on them. Not a ton. But here's like the whole kicker of the whole thing. Is that the mulberry, by the way, grafted some Girardi mulberries. You know what? We're not even done. There's so much more. I thought maybe we could get to some sort of end of this podcast, but we're not even close to the amount of fruit that is like in the backyard. Because I just remembered the Girardi's loaded. Maybe we should just skip ahead to some things. I grafted a lot of the Girardi. I took some Scion. Thank you to my buddy Phil down in Georgia, Mr. Strudel Dog. He sent me some Scion. I got one to take. Then I took Scion from that tree, grafted other trees, seedlings that just popped up. They pop up all the time. They're all over the place. Mulberries love to just pop up everywhere. So I grafted some, and 2 of them took. So I have some mulberries I can transplant to my new orchard when I move. And it's amazing seeing this Girardi mulberry in action. Like, it's true, guys. Girardi mulberry. It is so productive and dwarf that it's insane, actually. It's ridiculous, this thing. That's a pretty good photo right there of the amount of fruit in such a small area. I think this is Strudel Dog's video right here. I mean, that looks about as productive as it is. And it's dwarf. It doesn't get very big. I had a Illinois Everbearing. In its 3rd season, it reached 20 feet. Like, what the heck? This thing is staying really small. Look at that. That's out of a landscaping's photo, I believe, of Girardi. So it's super, super productive. There's another one called World's Best that I'm interested to try it at some point, to see what the flavor difference is. And it's supposed to be everbearing, and it's got other qualities that are different than Girardi. The gooseberries loaded, Hinnomaki Red. That thing is also bending its branches. So there's a couple plants that are so loaded that their branches are being bent down, which is in terms of the berries, which is the gooseberry, the gumi, and the blueberries are so loaded that the sheer weight of the fruit is bending the branches. The muscadine and the European grapes are also doing really well. However, some of these green grapes here, the Himrod, the Interlaken, they're just a pain in the butt. They're not worth it, I think, for some reason. There's something wrong with those vines. I'd be interested to try them both over again and to see what the deal is. I just remembered that some Some grapes are even grafted, which I had lost one of my vines all the way down in the ground. So I wonder if maybe that's a rootstock or if it's you know, the scion and was on its own roots. I don't know. But the Mars and the Everest seedless are fantastic. And what really shocked me was the Everest seedless because that's such a young plant. This is, I think, only its second or third season, and it's just like loaded with grapes. Like there's so many clusters on that thing that I'm honestly shocked. Um, yeah, I mean, the clusters will probably get thinned on their own, and there won't be that many grapes on it at the end of the day. But it's such a productive variety and great plant. It seems like to me. Double A Vineyards does a great job, I think, because I haven't done anything special to the grapevine, that's for sure. Um, and both the muscadines are really putting on their fruit now, so they're doing well. What we have to do soon is bag all the grapes, and I talked about bagging them here in this really humid climate with the what is the what is the name of the disease? I'm almost black rot. It's called. So when we bag them, we talked about in this video, they're not sprayed. I have absolutely no, protection on them other than this wax paper bag. It's a perfect cluster of grapes. There's like literally nothing wrong with them. It's amazing. They're so good. You know what though, guys? My biggest fear this year, I should do some sort of video on this soon. This could be a very, like, even though I'm really high on this year, and I'm really happy. There's all this fruit. There's one thing that can just ruin the whole thing, and it is in the form of the lanternflies. These lanternflies are everywhere. They just showed up in my yard last season. They've been in the area for a while. Finally made it to my yard last year, and the little babies are everywhere. This looks like a really good idea, whatever this is. I should probably do this because I don't really know what else to do. Like, they're everywhere in this baby stage right now. They're on every plant, every tree. There isn't a plant that they're not on, it seems like. They're all over the place. And it's such a problem because they're going to eventually turn into these adults, and they're going to be all over the vines. Like, this is my grape. This is what my grapevines are going to look like. Figs. My figs might look like this. So this is really concerning for me, at least. They like grapes, they like figs, and both of them are quite productive this year. So I don't know exactly what to do. Maybe I should figure out what this person is doing here and just do this. Yeah, I mean, there is thousands of lanternflies. There is. Now, what I think's going to happen, at least I would hope to not do anything. Like, that's the most ideal scenario, right? I've been, at least everything I've done so far in this yard, at least my methodology has been leave the pests alone. Don't spray anything. Don't even intervene in some way. Leave the food there because some other insect's going to come in and take care of them. The problem is there isn't really many predators for these things. I've noticed the praying mantis eats them and does a good job. The problem is I don't see many large praying mantises at this time of the year. So I've been seeing a lot of babies, and I always see praying mantises every year. And it seems like there's more and more of them every year, which is a good thing. They're even kind of extinct, I think, right? Or maybe that's a Pennsylvania thing. I don't know, but it's always been like when I grew up, try not to kill any of them because that was always like a thing we did. Is like a thing I knew when I grew up. So I don't know what the deal is if they're still extinct or not, but I think what's going to happen is that the praying mantises are going to become such a big thing because these lanternflies are everywhere and they're going to have more food and then they're going to therefore hopefully take care of the problem in maybe like a couple years, maybe like 2 or 3 years. Maybe the lanternfly population will be very minimal or something like that. So who knows? I mean, it says feeds on vines, black walnuts, and maples. I should put something around my maple trees to kill them. I could probably even use tanglefoot. Just put some tinfoil around the tree. Put the tanglefoot on the tinfoil. And that would probably work. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. This is going to be a learning experience. So that could ruin the whole damn thing. And that's unfortunate. It is what it is. Things like my quince, my juneberry, my elderberries, my there's like one or two other plants. They're really just kind of getting established still. So I'm not really expecting anything from them. The jujubes are all flowering, and usually they put out good fruit set. Some years they don't. Other years they do. The light situation makes sense to me, as some people think they don't have enough light, but I've had good success with them, and I think the ones I've kept over the year, Zhuzhou, Honey Jar, those two do really well. These other ones here are in the ground, I believe. Pretty sure Lee is in the ground. And then sugarcane's also in the ground. And they're getting really well established, both of those trees, and the flowers are all over the plants. So I'm hopeful. And then here's where the big winners are of this whole thing. I think are the pomegranates and the figs. So even though I have all these fruits we mentioned, I could be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of like 300 to 500 persimmons, which would be a dream come true. I think that would be literally, that'd make me so happy because the persimmon is really my favorite fruit. They're the Rosianka has always put out a ton of fruit. We have a video coming out soon on the fruit drop. I have a new theory as to why the fruit drop could be occurring. I haven't even scheduled it yet, but it is related, I think, to the persimmon psyllid, and I've seen very little damage from the psyllid this year. So I'm hopeful that a lot of the fruits aren't going to drop, and they very well may. I mean, I'm not going to just say that they won't or they aren't, but there's a good chance they won't. And then therefore, if all goes well, I've opened up the center of my tree, allow more light in the trees. The forms of all the persimmons are looking really good. Really happy with how they're growing. They look so healthy across the board that all the flowers, I would imagine, or most of them, on the younger trees should probably hold, which is odd. I'll probably see some drop here and there. On the Rosianka, I'm sure I'm going to see plenty of fruit drop, but this year I really think that it's all going to work out and they're going to hold their fruits. So we'll see. It's too early to tell. They've set, I know that for sure, and a lot of them have been pollinated at this point. So I've seen the bumblebees take care of that, no problem. It's just a matter of, is the persimmon going to drop them or not? And that's just synonymous, really, with persimmons, is that they just will drop persimmons. There's nothing really you can do to keep all of them. You can have a male, that'll help. But, inevitably, even with a male, even with trees that are very old, you're going to see some sort of fruit drop. So I'm expecting that, but we'll see. And then just to wrap the whole thing up, the figs are just doing ridiculous. I'm going to have a video. I didn't film it yet. I went through my entire potted fig tree orchard of young trees and old trees, or trees that should be of age to put out some kind of fruit. I only have 6 potted fig trees, 6 out of like 100 that will not have fruit on them or have not formed fruits at this point. Or the fruit buds are not present, really, is what I mean to say. And it really all comes back to the light. We talked about at the beginning of this episode, opening up the form and allowing these trees to get enough light has made the biggest difference in the productivity of my trees. There is nothing else. I can't attribute it to anything else. It's huge. It's massive. It's the only thing really, I think, that should really be in our minds for most of the spring, even in the fall when we do our pruning. Even the trees that were underneath the low tunnels, there were some hiccups with that, and I still have to update you guys on that. I haven't even done an update on it. We made a few mistakes. The trees did not get off to a start that we wanted. They just simply didn't. But they're obviously kicking now at this point of the season, and they are all doing super, super well. Even after cutting them back to 6 to 12 inches, we thought, oh, maybe it's hormonal. It's a hormone problem where we cut them back so far, and because we cut them back, the hormones are out of whack, and there's more roots to what's on top, and then they just want to grow and grow. But guys, the reality is it was a lack of light, and it was a lack of light this whole time. And every variety is very different. I really am going to do a number of videos on that to demonstrate really how important that is. And every variety, like I said, needs a certain amount of light to set their fruit. So a lot of figs are just adapted to certain climates, and it's no wonder that things like Hardy Chicago and Michurinska 10 and Ronde Bordeaux and Pastilliere and all these really early short season varieties, it's no wonder they do well here, because they just don't need any light. They are so well adapted to climates like France or somewhere that just doesn't necessarily have the best conditions for figs, and they've adapted there. And it's no wonder that some of the figs like Smith, that's adapted so well to the south, or even some of the Celeste strains, not all of them, but some of them just need a bit more light, it seems like, than others, especially Smith. I mean, that one's for sure. And then it's also no wonder that some of the varieties from like California, or some of them that are just very late or just overwhelmingly not very well adapted to climates like my own, it's like no wonder they take so long before they form their fruit buds. It just all makes sense at this point. That if I had, let's say, instead of 8 hours of light for my fig trees, and maybe I had full sun all day, I think there'd be an amazing difference in my perceptions and way I view figs if I had them in more light. And I've done my best to open up the canopies and give all the fruit buds more light. Make sure the fruit buds are setting, but I think it'd be so much easier, like if I had them in like 12 hours of light, let's say. It would be like a joke. I think almost all the varieties would fruit, and that's the only thing I can say with these potted trees is like of the 6 out of the 100 that don't have fruit buds, it's like I used to say, oh, they're finicky. They are stubborn. They don't want to fruit. But the reality is those varieties there are just adapted to other climates. They're not made for where I live. And it made me really realize that that the criteria for selecting these varieties and how well they'll do here and the productivity of what they'll do here is dramatically impacted by this light. So people might claim that one variety is really productive and another one isn't. But it's just not the case because, you just, if you had some variety that was, you know, said to be not very productive, like Smith as an example, is really said to be one of those problem childs, right? Stubborn varieties. Some people have great success, some people don't have great success. A lot of people complain about it. Well, I've learned this year, as soon as I opened up the canopy of my trees, where I used to think, oh, Smith is quite stubborn. It doesn't like to be pruned, is what I used to say. Well, the reality is it just needs more light than the average variety. And like I said, the criteria of which these varieties are judged is now changed. So way more of the perspective of if it can handle lower light conditions, it's going to be more productive. It's going to put out more fruits. Because here's the thing, right? We talked about this a little bit with my high density planting talk that we did, where we mentioned, well, what is the most amount of fruits that you could get based on the spacing of the trees? We had a 2-foot spacing, 3-foot spacing. We had cordons here that we did, a 4-foot spacing of our fig trees, by the way. And then we counted the number of fruiting branches. And the trees with the most fruiting branches, or let's say the more fruiting branches you can have in a given area, the potential for more fruit, right? That's kind of a definition of productivity, is something like productivity of fig trees is defined, or could be defined as more fruiting branches in a given area given the appropriate amount of light. So you're trying to have as many fruiting branches as you can in a given area while also giving them enough light. Now, sometimes you may have, it's not just enough to say more fruiting branches, you need to have a lot of fruits on those fruiting branches, right? So maybe if you had one tree and it was pretty big and maybe it had about 20 to 30 fruiting branches, well, how many fruits on each of those fruiting branches will it have in a season? That's definitely going to be something to consider. Whereas if you had maybe less fruiting branches, but maybe those fruiting branches are longer and have more fruits on them, that's obviously something to consider as well. So to me, I believe what is going to be the case going forward is that instead of having one fruiting branch every square foot, that's really what this thing does here. Every box represents 1 square foot. And that's the ideal spacing for these trees. So each of my plants, each of my trees with this 2-foot spacing that we have, you have to limit each of the trees to 4 fruiting branches, giving the trees an area of 1 fruiting branch per square foot. But if you had a variety like Hardy Chicago or Ronde Bordeaux or some of these others that don't require nearly as much sunlight, you could afford to have more fruiting branches in that area instead of having 1 fruiting branch per square foot. Maybe you could have 1 fruiting branch per every 8 inches or 10 inches or even closer, So mathematically, it'd be a lot more figs, just mathematically thinking about that, more fruiting branches, because you have better light. You've adapted your trees are more adapted to lower light conditions, therefore you should have better success. So some of these trees like the Daloso, like Black Beauty 10, like Fico Love, let's see here. I even have like a a list of special characteristics here. Hormonal imbalance, I think I called it. So some that really were difficult to get them to fruit after they were cut back. Yeah, things like Violet de Bordeaux. Although I've been seeing now my Violet de Bordeaux, now that I've opened up the center, I actually would totally disagree with this. I think this is totally incorrect. Victoria, absolutely. Texas BA1, Sultane, yeah. Smith, yes. Ron de Bordeaux, if you open it up, no. Osborne Prolific, yes. My Improved Celeste, oddly enough, yeah. Galicia Negra, yeah. So all these varieties here, Black Missions for sure. Maybe some of the Adriatics and maybe the Col de Dames. I have to think about that a bit more. But they for sure are adapted to higher light conditions. And 100% that needs to be considered in the overall form of the tree, everything you do with the tree, to be honest with you. Everything about it needs to be revolving around that light. And I'm thinking, even I should really strongly consider these 6 trees that out of the 100 that don't have the fruit buds, they just will probably never make the cut because of that. Unless I move and I have access to way more light than I do, they're just completely out of the running, I think, because at the end of the day, they're never going to be as productive. They're just not in a very high dense system. If I had them in a greenhouse and it was very orderly and we had all the sun and all that, it wouldn't necessarily matter, actually, because all the criteria, now that we're growing in a greenhouse versus growing it in my crappy climate with not a lot of sun, there's a huge difference between those two, and now the criteria has changed. But for now, the criteria just becomes totally skewed towards varieties that are adapted to this lower light condition. So we're going to talk a lot more about that, and I was really worried that we weren't going to learn much this year, but we've learned quite a bit already so far. So we're going to talk more about that as we go on. And I'm going to get now to the Q&A part of this talk. I appreciate you guys for hanging in there. I hope some of you guys are still listening that were here in the beginning. I said we'll do a Q&A at the end, but we finally got to the end. All right, so let's go through this whole thing here. For anyone that's just joining or doesn't know, please hit that subscribe button. Check out our blog, Fig Boss, and we're also selling some trees now on FigBid, and you can get all those links down in the comments here. So they're gonna end on Sunday. Hope you guys will check out the listings. All right. So if anyone's saying hello. Brian, I hope I fulfilled your need to hear more about persimmons. I cannot wait, because especially if all those persimmons fruit, I will certainly be covering all of them and the differences and certainly the flavors. And I was really lucky years ago. Actually, Phil Strudel Dog sent me a persimmon sampler one years ago, and I got to try many varieties of persimmons. And Seijo was out of this world good, but looking back, I kind of get the feeling that a lot of them just weren't ripe enough at the time that I tried them. But so far, I really am a big fan of Proc, and I really like the fruit quality on Rosianka. I think the Rosianka persimmon was probably at least the best one I've ever ripened here. And Proc is a really darn good persimmon that seems to be very stupidly productive, let's say. And it's early, which is good. The fact that it ripens so early before frost, I think really gives it a little bit more on the fruit quality aspect. We'll see about that this year, hopefully. Some will ripen after frost, well after frost, but that's mainly I think at that point about extending your harvest, you know. But I think if I could, I'd rather harvest them before frost for fruit quality purposes. Okay. All right. What's going on, Dave? I've been seeing a lot more of your videos keep getting recommended in my feed, Dave. So that's good. You're doing something right. Um. Okay, let's see here. Have you heard of Passionate Fruit said, have you heard of anyone trying to graft honeyberry onto honeysuckle rootstock since they're both of the same species or family? Not species. Is it family the right term? I'm planning on trying to graft on a tender growth with tomato grafting methods to attempt to overcome potential issues with the brittle inner wood and bark. Grafting multiple varieties on the same established rootstock should help with better cross pollination. I haven't heard anything about that. My initial thoughts is that you don't have to. I think they're difficult to establish, but like I said, if you put down a lot of organic material on the ground, they're going to do really well. My plants grow extremely well. Once I built up the organic material there and really covered the soil, they started to do a lot better. In the earlier years, it's good to water them too. What's going on, Derek? I haven't tried an achacha, no. What does it taste like? I know it's a tropical one. I can't grow it here. Isn't that a Garcinia? People are going crazy about these Garcinias. I keep seeing all these different Garcinia people on YouTube and stuff. I watch Pete Canaris's videos every once in a while, and a lot of those tropical guys love the Garcinias. Let's see here. We talked about the Primocane blackberries. Wolf Built says, what are your thoughts on azomite? Do you ever use them on figs? And yeah, it can't be a bad thing. I mean, what I've always recommended fertilizer-wise, cover all your bases, all your micronutrients, everything. You want to make sure that you're not missing any micronutrients. So that'll give you a lot of micronutrients and your trace minerals. Green sand's great too. I think people don't give green sand enough credit for some reason. Let's see here. Have you heard about the Frutilla Blanca strawberry Baker Creek is working on? Huh. Ancient cultivar that one of the parents for modern strawberries. They're supposed to taste like white peaches. I think I did read something about it. I've seen something about it. Maybe it was on Instagram. Maybe I should just search for strawberries. They probably don't even sell it, actually. It might just be only on there. There's a video here. You know, there's a lot of interesting strawberries. There's a guy in Japan I saw a video on somewhere, and he looked like he really knew what he was doing with strawberries. I was really interested to watch that one. I think I didn't have time or something at the time. James said, "Hey Ross, it's awesome you're live. I've been a huge fan for a long time." Oh, thank you, James. Thanks for joining me. Recently got a huge interest in fig varieties when I started growing, then found your channel. I've got many varieties. What's your opinion on fig trees as an investment? Recently started to collect all the most expensive and rare varieties. Once they're grown up, you can sell the rooted cuttings and air layers for hundreds of dollars. Which, in your opinion, are the best varieties to grow and sell just to eat? I've got Black Madeira, Nera 600M, Smith, Col de Dame, Bordesot, something, Blanca, something Ramada, Greece, Cavalieri, Panache, and more. You know, in terms of them as an investment, it's sort of worked out for me. If you can look at it like that. That wasn't, what I originally wanted to do, but sort of in the back of my mind when I was buying cuttings and buying plants, I thought, I could always recoup my investment. I think that's a decent way to look at it, is recouping your investment. But the problem is, I think if you're really looking to make a lot of money with this, you have to have a good reputation. And that's everything. And, there's always going to be some people who hate you or are jealous of you. And there's always going to be new people who come in and are totally clueless about, what it is that you're doing, or your reputation at all. And there's also people who buy without knowing the seller's reputation. But at least for me, it's always been about the reputation. It's never been about the variety. I try to really stay away from a lot of people when it comes to buying plants or cuttings from them. I'm very, very, very specific on who I get particular varieties from, simply because I really want particular varieties from a very specific source. And the source to me really means a lot. So everybody's different. Everybody has their own little thing, but it's always been, from my opinion, that you need a good reputation. And you can't just get a reputation like this. I personally don't buy plants from people I don't know. I see listings on FigBid of people that I don't know who they are. Especially if I don't see photos of the fruits, I don't even bother. It could be the nicest tree on the planet, but if you don't know a lot about what it is that you're even selling, you probably shouldn't even be selling it, to be honest with you. I think people are going to do whatever they want to do, and I'm happy that people are able to make their money back that they're putting in. And if someone wants to start their own fig business, go for it. I'm not going to say don't do it. Although I don't think it's a great idea, but at some point here in the near future, I do believe the end is coming with figs. You can kind of think of it as a pyramid scheme, as any investment is, in that some of these varieties get real hot, and then they're very expensive, and then they crash, and they're not hot, and they're not rare, and they're not expensive. And if you're the last one in, right, you're at the end of that pyramid scheme, and it's done. I mean, it's really not like, this isn't like it's a crime type pyramid scheme, but certainly that's just the nature of how rare things work, right? It's weird because people are going to hear what I just said, and they're going to get so uppity and takes whatever I said personal, but that's just logically what it is. That's it. I don't know how else to really voice my opinion on it. I think a lot of people don't understand economics or anything about rarity or pyramid schemes at all. So, yeah, that's my opinions on it. I don't think I need to say much more. Yeah. So, Passionate Fruit said, "Do you have any true Morris Niagara?" Yeah, I do. they are difficult to grow outside of a Mediterranean climate. No, the plants are not difficult to grow. If you have, even I had, a lot of a lot of humidity in my summers, but if you just have a healthy tree and you grow it in a pot, I even think if I grew it in the ground, I'm not going to deal with it. There's people, I don't know. I have not personally experienced an unhealthy. Yeah, there is some of that disease. Your tree just needs to be healthy. If you have a healthy Morris nigra, you can grow it in a place that has a humid summer. Yeah. Um, I got rid of mine because the fruit quality wasn't good enough to justify growing it in a pot. And not only that, I mean, it's a good fruit, but the fruit quality gets ruined by the humidity. So it's like a fig, But I think of it in a lot worse terms than a fig. Um, it just wasn't worth it growing in a pot. But if you're in a warm climate, you can grow it in the ground. I say go for it, even if it's humid. Like, as long as it's healthy, you feed the tree with lots of trees, right? Put down your organic material. You have a good bug ecosystem in your yard, and you don't have disease rampant everywhere. It's probably a tree you shouldn't plant first, right? Probably establish things for a couple years and then put it in. Joe said, hey, hello, Ross. Great seeing you live. Those are cool blueberries, but blueberries need acidic soil to thrive. Yeah, they do. That's why they do so well here. My soil is at a 6, just base level. Brian said you got to go to the mountains of Jersey. There's mountains in Jersey? Let's see here. Chandler, blueberry variety. When you said Chandler, I instantly, yeah, Chandler Bing, yeah. That's what came up in Google too. Wasn't just me. Passionate fruit neighbor's 30-foot apricot tree has one single apricot growing on it, probably due to lack of pollinator. Yeah. I have a friend, good friend of my dad actually. He has a similar problem. He only has one apricot tree. It's huge, and he doesn't have any apricots. That seems to be like a big problem with them. I need 2 varieties. Beat me up, Scott said. Beat me up, Scott, not beat me up, Mr. Scott. I can't read. If you get the right raspberries in the right spot, they go by themselves. Yeah, definitely worth asking around to see what berry grows best locally. Hey Ross, you inspired me to get some Mar de Bois. That's awesome, dude. I hope they do well for you. Split my order with a friend. All mine died, but my friend had some survivors. That's good. If you can't get any to survive, let me know in the fall, and I will send you some. Joe said, apricots are good names for short. I've heard raspberries and blackberries grow profusely spread like weeds. 2 types of weeds I love. Probably should put this over here, actually. Whoop. I've had good luck with alpine strawberries and hanging pots. Yeah, I imagine they do well like anywhere. They're so easy to grow. James said, "What's your favorite fig variety based on flavor?" Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that part of your question, James. I really like De La Roca. The Col de Dames are my favorite, and De La Roca seems to be the best Col de Dame. Col de Dame Mutante is getting a lot of praise recently. Sure, that one's great. It's got some drying capabilities to it. Lampira 1, I think, is going to be fantastic. Another Col de Dame-ish type fig. Has anyone got a figoin tree? You know, my mother figoin tree actually died. I cut it back, and it was a grafted tree. I cut it back too far, planted it underneath the greenhouse or underneath the low tunnels, along with a few other trees. Did the same thing. Um, a lot of my prized varieties I really, really loved. Fortunately, I have backups for almost all of them, but kind of have to restart with some of those varieties. So it's a real shame, but it is what it is. Lesson learned. You don't if you have a grafted tree, you don't want to cut the graft too far back. I think, and I wonder if some people have struggled in the past when they bought some bare rooted grafted trees from me. I hope that they had success having it come back from the graft. The fact that they were in the underneath the low tunnels in such a crazy environment, I made a huge mistake there. So that obviously contributes, but I probably wouldn't cut back a grafted tree too far anyway, regardless nowadays. Yeah, you guys want to try to stay away from eBay and Amazon. Even what's that craft site? Personalized Etsy. That there it is, Etsy. You probably want to stay away from Etsy. Get your plants from like really reputable nurseries. The strawberry store I hear is really great. Mm. And alpine strawberries are really difficult to start from seed. I've done it. I succeeded, but it's tough. I haven't really liked my Alberta peach that much so far. The Che is grafted onto. It's a Norris Che grafted onto. Uh, what is the name of that plant? It's not coming to me. It's the typical rootstock for Che. Yeah, I gotta start drinking wine during these live streams. I forgot. I forgot. Holy crap, we'd messed up, guys. Gooseberries are good. They taste like grapes. I wouldn't say they're better than blueberries, though. Yeah, I did have some loquats years ago. Grew it in a pot. Actually, someone asked me about loquats today, and it just didn't seem like it was worth my time. But looking back on it, I think that would be like the one fruit tree, probably other than the citrus, that I would grow indoors. I think it's probably worth it. I haven't given it enough of a shot. Oh man, you haven't heard of the lanternfly yet? I hope it doesn't spread all over the place. Someone's here from Italy. 4:35 a.m. What's up, Ray? You don't? Are you Italian? Or are you visiting? I never heard of Green Lake as an Italian name. The pomegranates, by the way, we didn't talk about them, but they're flowering as well. And the what is the variety I have? We're blanking on too many names. There's too many names, too many things to remember here, guys. the Salavatsky is looking massive. It is looking so good. It's so healthy. I haven't seen any flowers yet, but the sunbar has flowered. I think my red silk died. Probably should leave something here. And then the sunbar is flowering. One of the other ones is flowering as well. And hopefully soon I see some flowers on the Salavatsky. I think that pomegranate. That would be the other thing. So, other than the apples, what could not fruit for me this year is the pomegranates, and I think that would be a big disappointment. But I think I'm going to get lucky this year. I don't know. This year, I just feel like everything's going well. You know, it's the best year so far by far. Hmm. Solo's been here since we went live. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Scott. And then passionate fruits that are pastelier and unknown pastelier are the same fig. We finally caught up almost to you guys. Um, you know, that's a really good question because I don't know, and there's different strains of pastelier that so far they might show signs of less fruit drop. Um, Harvey at least told me one time that told me last fall, I believe, last season, that he believes pastelier and unknown pastelier are the same fig, and that his pastelier drops all the time, just like unknown pastelier, and that even if unknown pastelier is pollinated, it still drops fruit every year. So I'm starting to think. I'm starting to think he's right. Even the leaf patterns look very similar. But you know what I think more is even the fruit looks similar and the leaf pattern looks very similar. But to me, I think what could be more accurate is that there are different strains of pastelier, and that unknown pastelier is just a strain of pastelier, and certain strains and certain sources, and that's why the source is so important of these figs, is that some of them just might drop more than others, or some may never drop. You know, it's just kind of very interesting, I think, how figs work, and maybe there's something internal that went wrong with one of the strains, and unknown pastelier is that strain that broke somehow. You know what I mean? It just somehow something broke inside of it. I don't know. Some gene is being switched on or off the wrong way. Have I tried miracle fruit? Not yet. Pretty interested though to try it at some point. Frank says check your Facebook messages. I need help. You got it, Frank. At some point, probably in the next week, I will check. Um, how much water do honeyberries take? The honeysuckle rootstock is twofold. Take advantage of old invasive honeysuckle stumps and the reduced water demand. Interesting. Yeah, you might be onto something. You might be on another level here. I don't know enough about honeysuckle or honeyberries to really comment on any of this. But I don't think honeyberries need a lot of water, personally. I think they just don't do well without a good soil environment. Soil good without good soil life and good organic material and exchange of water that's happening. Maybe it's not the amount of water, but the ability to uptake water or nutrients or something. Chris says, "Have you started planning the future, or it's still too early?" Yeah, yeah. You know, I'm gonna have so much content when I move that it's gonna be insane. Like, I think really at that point the channel's gonna take off. I may even start another channel at that point. That's I thought about doing that this year, was to start another channel that was not fig related, and this one would be exclusively just for figs. So we'll see. Um, Thank you, Raymond. Melbourne, huh? Your fig season's you're in the wintertime, aren't you? Yeah, you're getting into the winter, man. That's tough. That's tough. it's always it's always tough seeing you guys post pictures of figs and things when I'm in my winter, and now you have to. Well, I guess I can keep you entertained, right? Um, Chris, there is some thoughts, by the way, back to what Chris was saying. I have some thoughts on certain things. The problem is I haven't picked out a piece of land yet, so I don't know what the land's going to be like. But there are certain things that I would really like to have on this land, particularly a bunch of different ponds. So hopefully there's a difference in elevation, and I can create myself natural ponds. I really want to experiment with that because I think that creates a really good bug ecosystem on your property. Are those ponds, if done right, and not only for ponds, but like kind of like a natural swimming pool in a sense. There's a guy on YouTube, forget his name. Yeah, the Chase on Osage orange, by the way. But there's a guy, an English gentleman, who's really into natural pools on YouTube, and his videos really caught my eye. I think his name is Pagan Butler or something. Funny guy, big curly blonde hair, funny English guy. And the point is that he is way into natural ponds, and he definitely showed me very easily how you can design a natural pond that it would just be, you know, total common sense, no brainer to do. And I want to have one pond for like a swimming pool, but also a pond for fish, or maybe a couple ponds for fish, and stock them with fish so that I can have, access to fresh fish anytime I want. Got to get those omega 3s. So I'd rather farm fish in a sense than, if I can, than like some animal. I've been very interested though in pasture raised meats very recently, and I'd like to potentially have some land for animals. I don't want to just completely eliminate that possibility, because it's just you can't put a price on that. Problem is, I don't want to be a slave to my land. You know what I mean? I want to be able to leave whenever I want, and with animals, that's very difficult. I don't know what piece of fruit, honestly, or what piece of fruit. I don't know what type of fish it would be. Passionate fruit. I don't even know what a snakehead is. I don't know much about fish. All I know is that it's possible if you can have a good ecosystem of your pond, and and fish survive in nature. Why can't they survive in my pond? You know what I mean? And if it's a good fish that's good eating too, there's got to be something. Maybe like bass. I've never even had a bass. I don't even think something that'll survive the winters here, and it'd be interesting, I think. But you definitely want to. I definitely want to try bees in the future. Problem is, it just might be to a point where it's too much to take care of this stuff. It's just too much work, and then I don't have a life to do other things. So we'll see. It could things could get too out of control too quickly with just knowing how I am. Um, but in terms of plants and fruit trees and things, there'll be a pretty decent sized garden area, but that's mostly it. I don't need a huge garden. Um, Maybe 100 by 100 plot I think would be enough for me. Maybe more than enough. As I get a family, I think it's gonna be increased maybe, but I don't need a ton of space for a garden. The fruit trees are gonna take up a ton of space, and the amount of fruiting plants I would like uh, to trial, I would even like a section just to preserve figs. Also, want a section for greenhouses for these figs. So we're looking at probably 5 to 10 acres, maybe even more. I don't know. Problem is, it's so expensive, and yeah, that's another part of this. All right, what are we at here? So Mark, oh yeah, so passionate fruit even asked you the same thing. A small grafted peluche. So you bought a loquat from those people, and maybe I should try one again. Hmm. Does white Madeira taste the same as black Madeira? No. Maybe in California and pollinated, Harvey says they taste very similar, but here I have extreme doubts because I've tasted both of them at this point, and they're very different figs. Mark said he's still doing a fig Facebook group. Got back on Facebook just for tropical fruit groups. Yeah, no, I mean I have one, but it's just kind of for very close friends, and I have not really posted much or kept up with it at all this past winter or this past spring. I'm gonna see if I have time, and maybe we'll look towards that at some point again. But I'm not really in any rush, and I don't think any of my friends are really in any rush because there's not really much going on. When we start talking about varieties and seeing the different fruits, then we'll be probably a lot more active. But there's not really a huge desire of mine to be posting every day in a Facebook group or something, or to even have a lot of people in the Facebook group. It's just a small thing that we get together and talk about varieties and the hobby. Some ideas I have, I just tend to bounce the ideas off of a few friends. I'll just message them and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And that's good enough for me. Um, I don't want to also be like a moderator of or a babysitter of adults either. So there's no chance I'm going to do a Facebook group for the general public. Um, James Frederick, you should make a channel where you find the original rare fig trees in the wild and take cuttings, possibly try to name a variety. That'd be awesome. I wish. Um, Prickly pear in New York City. Yeah, in the future for sure, Joe. There are some varieties that can survive the winter here, like a zone 6. But the problem is the fruit quality good? That's my only thing. It doesn't matter to me if it survives. I've even seen them at like Longwood Gardens, for anyone that's familiar with that. It's like a really pretty, really, really well done and pretty. How would you put it? Uh, just place that's beautiful. They make it beautiful with plants and trees. They have all these interesting weird plants and things and varieties of weird plants. Yeah, a nursery business isn't a bad idea in terms of figs. I'm pretty good at propagating them. Selling trees, not just the cuttings. If I could, I'd prefer to sell the trees because a lot of people will just the innate nature of cuttings. People just tend to complain. It just is what it is. You're not going to have everyone's not going to have success. I can't do it for them and guarantee that they're going to have success. Someone told me that recently I should really try to do big business in selling fig trees, like huge scale type business, but I don't think I want to do that. Snakeheads are very good eating. They're also invasive and have reported to be giant monsters that tear apart adult ducks whole. So they're definitely illegal to raise. Interesting. Okay. Tilapia and catfish or other ideas. I don't. Will catfish survive this far? I guess they will. There was a cat. Yeah, they will. Hmm. Holy crap! You can, if you catch a snakehead, you can be fined for releasing it. Python breeding. If you buy $10,000 python, babies are worth as much as. Whoa, dude, James, you're into all kinds of these weird um, investment strategies, huh? But I wonder if you have like coins or like cards and stuff. How about those non fungible tokens? All right, guys, I'm gonna call it a night here. Prickly pear that can withstand freezing temperatures typically don't produce good quality fruit. Yeah, that's the problem, right? Yeah, and they who knows? I would like to have greenhouses as well for just tropical fruits. So, um, maybe I probably wouldn't put a prickly pear in a greenhouse, but yeah, we'll see. Who knows? So anyway, thanks guys for joining me. This was fun. It's getting late here, so I gotta go to sleep, and we'll see everybody soon. All right. More videos to come. Hopefully, you guys have a good season too. It's going well here, so I don't want to make anybody feel bad or anything, but I'm sure you guys in time will have a very good season as well. And it's just a matter of time, especially if you really get that soil life down. A lot of these perennials just do so much better. Add on some mulch. Trees eat trees. I believe that. So we'll see you guys soon. All right. Take care.